Hello, and welcome to the Smart Elections Election Protection Forum. I'm Lulu Friesdat. I'm the Executive Director and co-founder of Smart Elections, and with me here is
Bennie Smith, Shelby County Election Commissioner and Technical Advisor for Smart Elections.
and we'll do some quick visual descriptions. Visual descriptions are for those with visual impairments. And I'm a pale woman who has not been out in the sun enough all winter. I have long brown hair with bangs, and I'm in front of a brick wall. I'm in a blazer with a necklace. And Bennie?
Bennie Smith, I'm a black male with low haircut that looks like I need a haircut. And I have a blue and white checkered shirt on. And I'm sitting in front of 6 monitors, and it looks like I'm about to be eaten by a jellyfish.
Okay, and we will try to remember to do the visual descriptions as people come on, as our guests come on. What we do when we post the video is we put chapter breaks. So if you want to skip all of this opening part, you can go straight to the guts of the program, and that'll be in the notes below in the YouTube notes. So tonight we have a really fascinating show, and it's going to be a bit of a geek out show. There's just no getting around it. We're talking about digital ballot images, and it's a geek topic. Do you want to talk a little bit about what digital ballot images are, Bennie?
I think we're going to dig in. It's a selfie that the computer takes, and it's the ballot for the computer. For us, it would be a paper ballot, but for the computer, it's actually the ballot image. That's the ballot for the computer.
That's an interesting way of saying it, a selfie. So what Bennie means by that is not that it's a selfie of like you and your ballot together, which some people do take. This is just a photo that the
Of
machine
itself.
It's a photo of the ballot that the scanners, most of us vote on scanners in most states, the scanner takes a photo. And lucky for us, we have an expert here, Susan Pynchon, who's going to talk to us about digital ballot images. She's tremendously well informed. She is the executive director of Florida Fair Elections Coalition and also works with Audit USA. And then we also have with us a state senator from Arizona, where there is a lot of controversy about digital ballot images right now. And we're going to find out more about that and what's going on in Arizona. There is legislation there that would make digital ballot images available to the public. They are often not right now available to the public. So that is our journey for the evening. And as I said, it's going to be a little bit wonky, but we will try to have fun like we always do. Let's just get you a little bit up to speed about us. If you're not familiar with us, we are Smart Elections, and we are a nonpartisan nonprofit dedicated to improving our elections, making them transparent, secure, fair, and publicly verifiable, as well as accessible. We are nonpartisan. So there is a lot of kind of partisan antagonism around this issue. We are nonpartisan, and we really try to look at the evidence of any given issue. And if you want to learn more about us, you can go to our website, which is smartelections.us. And if you want to reach out to us, you're going to go to contact, email us, contact@smartelections.us. We do really enjoy hearing from you. And we especially like if you have comments, if there's things that you really enjoyed about the forum, please put them in the chat or email us. If there's things that you want changed or ideas for other forums, then please go ahead and let us know that too. And I'm just checking the chat to see, it looks like everybody's hearing us okay. I do want to say that we had a problem with our YouTube link through StreamYard. It just completely stopped working. So if you're watching on YouTube, probably you found the new link. There is a new link for YouTube. And if there's people who are struggling on YouTube, somebody, maybe Kelly, I see Kelly's out there. Maybe you'll pop over to, if somebody's struggling with the Facebook, I don't know, what did I say, Bennie? Which link isn't working?
YouTube.
No, I said that all wrong. The Facebook link is what we had trouble with. I think everybody here is on YouTube. If you're on Facebook and you have an old link from earlier in the week, it isn't working, but there is a new link if you want to watch on Facebook. I hope that was clear.
Now it is.
Now it is. Okay. And please do put comments in the chat. I see a bunch of our regulars here, Jean and Bruce and Kelly, Dale, Mark Shaw. Great to have you all here. Thank you so much for being with us. And we are going to dive right in. So the first thing that I want to do, there's an echo, isn't there?
I don't hear one.
You're not hearing one? It goes away sometimes and then it comes back. I'm going to get a new computer soon, I promise. I think that's going to help.
Prayerful.
What, Bennie?
We remain prayerful.
I know. Send those donations if you want to get rid of that echo.
Right.
Okay, we are ready to introduce Susan Pynchon. Susan, thank you so much for joining us. And it's a pleasure to have you with us. And I'll just give a brief introduction. Susan has a tremendously knowledgeable portfolio. She's the co-founder and executive director of the Florida Fair Elections Coalition. They've done tremendous research throughout the years that really has influenced and had a strong impact. One of the studies that they did was influential in taking some of the direct record electronic machines, which were quite insecure and unreliable, out of service in Florida. And that was based quite a bit on some of the research that you did, right, Susan?
That's correct, Lulu, yes.
Like to let people know how impactful you've been. So tonight you're going to talk to us about digital ballot images, and we're going to just let you take it away.
Thank you so much. It's good to be here. Hello, everybody. Again, my name is Susan Pynchon, and I have been monitoring and investigating elections since 2004, 2005. And I've monitored elections not just in Florida, but in other places in the country, including Shelby County, Tennessee, which is where Bennie is from, who you see there with Lulu. And several years ago, I started studying about ballot images. And full disclosure, I have to say I am an absolute proponent of ballot images. They have been surrounded by a fair amount of controversy. I tend to think that most of the controversy is based on misunderstanding or just lack of understanding. So I hope tonight will be educational for everybody. And I would ask everyone to keep an open mind about both saving ballot images and releasing them to the public, because there are tremendous benefits for doing that. So with no further ado, I'm going to start just a brief presentation. I want to first just sort of show people what is a ballot image. So let's see, I have to click on, there we go. Oops. Is that showing up, Lulu? Excuse me for having to ask.
Yes, I can see it.
Okay.
90%.
Yep. Okay. So there we go. Thank you. So again, just a few short slides on ballot images and the importance of ballot images. Over 90% of election offices in the United States use some type of digital scan voting systems. They can either scan hand-marked paper ballots, or they can scan ballot summary cards from an all-digital machine called a ballot marking device. So what happens is, as Bennie said earlier, when your ballot gets scanned by the voting machine, and this can be if you're there in person, it can also be if you send in your vote by mail ballot, it also gets scanned generally on high-speed scanners that scan the vote by mail ballots. And it's literally just a picture of the front and back of your ballot. If it's a multi-page ballot, it takes pictures front and back of all the pages. Now you can see one of the misunderstandings about ballot images is that there's somehow your name is on there, or your picture. I've actually heard people say, oh, if they print my ballot image, they'll have my picture and my name. No, there's no identifying marks on there. When your ballot leaves your hands or leaves your mail-in envelope, it becomes anonymous. It cannot be traced back to you. So the voting machine takes a picture of the ballot, and it actually counts the votes from the picture, not from the paper ballot itself. So that makes this ballot image part of the chain of custody of the vote, or chain of custody of the ballot. And you definitely would not want to destroy this. This is the evidence of how the voting machine saw your ballot. So it's very important to preserve this record. And yet, in many places in the country, and I'm in Florida, and half our counties are saving ballot images and half are destroying them. And there's a lawsuit that's been ongoing now for a several years, trying to force all counties to save ballot images.
So I think it's really important to be clear about this because people do not realize this, but the voting machine does not count the paper ballot. The scanners take a photo of the ballot, that's the digital ballot image, and that is what they use to count. So it is a part of the chain of custody. So I just want to be super, super clear about that. That, right, that image is what is being counted. And I've got a question already. Let's take a question from Bruce Korb. If I write myself in for dog catcher, will my name be on the ballot? And he believes it needs removal. Do you want to address that?
Alrighty.
I'm so glad that you asked that question because this comes up all the time. What about people who write their name on the ballot, or what if, and this is the answer. I hope that people will think that this is the answer to that.
Now, he's asking specifically about a write-in vote, not somebody who writes their name on the ballot.
But I'm going to address the write-in,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
So Bruce, if your name gets written in as on a write-in vote, I don't know if you're saying you wrote it in or someone else wrote it in, but yes, anybody can write anything in on a ballot. The county actually publishes a list. Anyway, most counties publish a list of all the write-in votes, including Mickey Mouse. They give you how many for each. So yes, anyone whose name is written in would show up. If someone writes their own name on the ballot, which is, I've looked at thousands of ballots because they're public record in Florida, the paper ballots. Very rare. The only thing I've ever seen is someone who put their initials next to a change on their ballot. But even at that, you don't know that it was that person who wrote their name on there. I could write Lulu's name on my ballot. So it's not an official signature. I can scrawl my name on a bathroom wall or on a ballot. It's not official. Nobody knows that that is the person that wrote their name on there because there's no way to go back and check. So that, Bruce, did I answer your question? You're on mute, Lulu.
Yeah. He's saying that he can identify his ballot by his handwriting, and that is true. That doesn't violate the sanctity of the ballot because you know your handwriting.
No, that's right, Bruce. Because now in Arizona, where this is now being debated in the Senate and the House, a bill to make ballot images available to the public, ballot selfies are legal. In Arizona, it's in the law. You can take a picture of yourself with your ballot after you voted it. You're not supposed to take it in the voting booth, but if you have your vote by mail ballot at home, you can take a picture of it and send it to whoever you want and show it to whoever you want. So this is nothing new that can't already happen, at least in Arizona.
I would add that there's nothing to stop you from playing tic-tac-toe with your ballot, and absent a write-in, you could bubble far to the left, far to the right, and an X for the third one, and you can create a system of being able to identify your ballot. There's no problem with doing that. That doesn't violate the sanctity of the ballot because you know how to identify your own ballot. You know your own handwriting, so that's going to happen automatically when a ballot when the image is posted, and that happens this way now anyway.
That's right, Bennie. Thank you. That was a good explanation. So,
yeah, I do want to point out something here. So I think what Susan is saying is that there are a lot of different ways that your ballot could be identified that even before you get to digital ballot images, you can take a selfie of you and your ballot in Arizona legally. So you don't need the digital ballot images to be posted to sell Florida your vote. Too. It's you're well past that now. So I think that is really becomes a non-issue. I believe in Colorado, they're redacting some of this information. And Susan brought up a really good point with me when we were discussing this, which is that once you redact the information on the ballots, you've lost the ability to hash them, which is, I'm going to talk about later, how important it is to hash the ballots. A hash, for people who aren't familiar with this, Bruce, I know you're familiar with it, is a security measure that lets you know if a document or a batch of documents has been changed in any way. And those digital ballot images need to be hashed immediately upon creation in the machine. And then if you go and redact them, you have lost the ability to, you've really lost the ability to have the hash be meaningful. Bennie, do you want to weigh in on that?
That's true. And I would just add that the write-in is the only time you'll see this identifying information, because you're going to know your own handwriting. He's going after vote intimidation and vote selling. That's a problem now. You can take a picture. You can sneak and take a picture if the state doesn't allow you to do it. I don't think that is going to turn up in the pattern that's large enough to decide an election due to a number of people using the same method. So I think it's a point that will resolve itself.
Okay, so let's
And
move on. I want to go back to Susan's
Could I
presentation.
add one? Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah, of course.
Just
No,
one
go
quick
on,
thing
Susan.
about that. Thank you. Is that as far as vote selling, as Benny just said, you could do that from your kitchen, the vote by mail. Not that people are doing it. Lulu, I guess I don't know what the point was that I was going to make. So let's just move on. And
Yeah, you could do it in your home.
There's a lot of
it's
different.
unaltered at that
Yeah,
point.
I'm sorry,
You
Benny.
can
Go
do
ahead.
it.
Yeah,
You can
like
make a
vote from
whole
home.
movie with the ballot before.
Oh, I know what I was going to say. It's just that people need to be aware, or most people maybe are aware, that ballot images are actually posted online in several places. San Francisco posts their ballot images online. Dane County, Wisconsin. I just found another county in Wisconsin that also posts online. And Maryland makes their images available. Florida, the counties that are saving, they're available. And there have been no big reports of vote schemes or vote selling or anything based on ballot images. So I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah.
And
So,
just to be clear, in Maryland, as far as I know, when I talked to the Clear Ballot people at a demo recently, they're actually not releasing the full ballot image, as far as I know. That what they're releasing are the actual, they isolate the votes, and then they release like those votes, so you can see like a whole page of like the little bubbles circled in. That's what I've seen them release. But maybe it's changed since I spoke to them. So they are being, but in San Francisco and in Dane County, Wisconsin, the whole ballot is just being put online.
correct.
Right. Okay. So let's keep going. And we do have State Senator Ken Bennett from Arizona, and we're going to get him on here shortly. We're really excited to have him with us. So Susan, I'm going to go back to your presentation and we're going to move on.
Okay, let me go back here. Oops. Okay, so this is just to show you how the voting machine interprets the votes as it scans your ballot. So on the left, you see a piece of an actual ballot. These are actual Florida ballots. And in this case, the person voted for Donald Trump. This, of course, was a 2020 ballot. And then on the right, you see also circled in red, which the machine does not do. I did this, circling it in red. It says counted. So this is called the cast vote record, and each ballot image has a corresponding cast vote record that shows how the vote was counted in each race. So if you went down the ballot, you'd see this repeated all down through. Someone voted and it says counted. Someone voted and it says counted. At the very end of the, I'll show you that in a minute. So here's one. Now here's a different kind of sample. In this case, this again is an actual Florida ballot. Someone circled the oval for Donald Trump. And because it was not in the space that the voting machine is looking for, which is inside the oval, the machine actually counted it, says it's uncounted. It's called an undervote, meaning it was not counted. Now, in a lot of places, like in Maricopa County, Arizona, they go through something called electronic adjudication, where they take all of these and look at them again with using electronic adjudication. Anything that's not clear actually goes to a real human being to look at again. And I think that's important, because I've heard people criticize electronic adjudication. A lot of people aren't aware that actual people look at it once a ballot gets kicked out for any reason to determine how that vote should be interpreted. And it's a team of people. It's not just one person that makes that decision. So, but
And
this is
in what state is that, Susan?
That's Arizona. Maricopa County, Arizona, does electronic adjudication. And some places they do manual adjudication. But this just shows that the voting machine doesn't always get it right.
It's really helpful to see that. And then we have a question from Jean Dufort about this. What is the serial number she's asking on that cast vote record?
The serial numbers actually show the precinct and
The computer that the
I think
scanner
that's
that
the
scanned
voting
it.
machine serial number, right? I see machine serial number and serial
Scanner
number.
that scanned it.
yes, that's correct. The machine serial number, and then it should have the precinct on there also. But there's no identification of voters in that number.
But what's interesting about that is if you have, say, a whole series of ballots that somehow aren't counted correctly, you could go back and see if, say, they were all from one machine or something like that. You do have some really in-depth information here to take a look at.
Absolutely. And
Good for audits.
for audits and other things. For example, in Florida, I'll just give one quick example. Every presidential race and every governor's race, there's feedback, there's echo coming from somewhere. There are tens of thousands of overvotes, people voting twice in the same race. And when you look at the ballot images, you can see which precincts this happened in. It seems to affect largely minority precincts and language minority. You can see if your ballot design is flawed somehow that are causing people to not vote correctly on a ballot. So that's just one example, but there's so many things that these ballot images can be used for that can improve our elections.
Super.
Now,
let's move on.
Okay, thank you, Lulu. So now, if someplace does not save the ballot image, like again, half the counties in Florida are not saving ballot images, then the cast vote record is not saved either, that individual cast vote record. And what you end up with, and you end up with this regardless of whether they're saved or not. This is also, just for confusion's sake, called the cast vote record, but we call it the summary spreadsheet. So every ballot, every side of a ballot, like starting with the top row, if you go across, it will be every race that's on that page of the ballot, and it will show how it got counted. So every single ballot in the whole county shows up on this cast vote record summary spreadsheet. This is by Election Systems and Software called ES&S. The Dominion one works slightly differently, but it's basically the same concept. So if you don't save the ballot images and you lose that individual cast vote record, this summary spreadsheet is an Excel file, and it can be changed, can be altered. You need those original records to be able to go back. It's sort of like they're the foundation for this final spreadsheet, and they all work together to create a final product. So again, saving those images is just really important. And then, Lulu, did you want to add anything to that, or Bennie? Okay, and lastly, do you want me to not show those, Lulu?
No, why don't we come back to the maps in a bit? I'd like to get Ken on and
Sure,
start talking about the bill. Susan made some maps that show us where they're being kept and where they're being put online and stuff, and those are going to be really interesting. So let's keep that as a treat. And then I want to introduce our next guest. And I see your question there, Bruce, about manipulating the digital ballot images. So
I'll take that one.
And I actually have a demo for you too. So we're going to come back to that. That's a good reason to stay on. That's going to be in a little bit. But right now, I'm really pleased to bring into the forum former Secretary, current Arizona State Senator and former Secretary of State of Arizona. Pleasure to have you with us. It's really a delight to have you here.
Thank you, Lulu. Good to see you again. Good to see my good friend Bennie.
What's up, Ken?
Thank you, Susan, for your contributions so far. I've been listening, and where do we want to go?
So I think the first thing is just to talk about the bill. You've introduced a bill, and I understand that it passed the Senate today.
It did, and I am told that it would have had 2 Democrats supporting the bill in addition to all of the Republicans if it were not for some high pressures coming from somewhere where the Senate caucus leadership is literally threatening individual Democrat members to not vote for the bill. So it's unfortunate that I think we really had some bipartisan support. But as I explained on the floor, we'll continue to address every issue or concern that people have. And by the time we're all done, I expect to have strong bipartisan support from both Republicans and Democrats in both the House and the Senate. But the bill did pass through today.
What's the bill number, just so we can start with basics?
The bill number is Senate Bill 1324. And there is a companion bill over in the House, 2560, that none other than the Speaker of the House, Ben Toma, agreed to support. I'm very honored that our current Democrat Secretary of State, Adrian came out in support of the bill from the very beginning. When Adrian was the Maricopa County recorder in charge of about half of the election process here in Maricopa County, he supported that idea then. The idea of transparency in our elections through the release of ballot images and cast vote records so that you can see that that there's a ballot image for everyone who voted and that the cast vote record added up those votes on those anonymous ballots correctly. That idea was actually embraced and passed as part of the Arizona Democrat State Party platform more than 10 years ago. So this is not a Republican versus Democrat idea. This is just how do we make elections transparent, trackable, and publicly verifiable. And given my 6 years as Secretary of State, I oversaw 12 statewide elections here in Arizona. I served in the audit that was criticized from a variety of different points, but it did tell me, and Bennie was kind enough to visit the audit. I worked hand in hand, day by day, with John Brakey from Audit USA down in Tucson. And I'm Republican, John is Democrat, but we really came together on how do we make our elections transparent, trackable, and publicly verified. And what we came up with is Senate Bill 1324. And it basically says the counties release 4 pieces of information, one before the election, and that's the list of who's eligible to vote in the election. In Arizona, we cut off voter registration 29 days before the election. Those voter registration records and rolls are already public information. But the first thing that the counties would do would be sometime before the election. I think it says 10 days, at least 10 days before the election in this bill. They would release an abbreviated list of the voters eligible to vote in that election by name, street address, and precinct, I think it is. And then the other 3 pieces of information that are released are after the election, after the certification, or the canvass, as we call it in Arizona, which is done by each county's board of supervisors. And the first of those 3 would be who voted in the election. Now, if you have the list of who was eligible and the list of who voted, the first fundamental transparency is that everybody who voted should have been eligible to vote. And I think it will be proven that in transparent, honest elections, we're not letting anybody vote who wasn't eligible to vote. And between those 2 reports, we can verify that nobody is either registered or voting more than one time. The second piece of information that's released after the election, third overall, would be the ballot images that Susan was just talking about. Obviously, there should be one ballot image for every person who voted in the election, but the ballot images are anonymous. And as Bruce and others were kind of questioning, there could be some voter education things that we need to do as we move into this type of transparency, where voters need to understand that the images of their ballots are anonymous unless they choose to put their own name on a ballot. I might have to talk to my mom, actually, because she often writes my name in for, President of the United States or whatever, if she's confused or doesn't really support somebody. she told me years ago that she writes my name in. So people may think that's Ken Bennett's ballot, but it's actually his mother Donna's. And then the last piece of information that would be released after the canvass would be the cast vote record. And the cast vote record is, as you saw, there's various versions of them. But between the ballot image and the cast vote record, you can see that the votes on ballots were accumulated and totaled in the cast vote record. And if you can, so basically, I think of it as a spreadsheet. Spreadsheet has rows and columns. And if you have the image of ballot 692, and there's a vote for Smith and Jones and Garcia on that ballot, you can go to the cast vote record and see that the system recorded votes for Smith and Jones and Garcia. Then you can add up the columns or the votes for anyone, Smith or Garcia, and verify that the total number of votes for Garcia was exactly match the total number of votes that the county said they got, because that's where they get the number in the first place. So it's just total transparency. Who was eligible to vote? Who voted? There's a ballot image for each one of those people. And we have the spreadsheet that those votes from those anonymous ballot images were added up. Those are the four things that this bill does. Now, it goes to great lengths at the request of various senators and county officials and things to, for example, protect that we're not releasing the names of protected voters in Arizona. If you're a judge or a police officer or prosecutor, if you are a victim of domestic violence, there's 2 or 3 categories of voters in Arizona that their names are protected. So those would be listed as a number of combined voters who are protected. So when the county releases the list of eligible voters or voters who voted in the election, you would have the individual names, which is already public record. It's already a public record, whether you are registered to vote or if you vote in an election. It's called your voter history, and a county keeps track of whether you vote in an election. And when campaigns or political consultants or anybody buys the voter lists, they're getting the list of voters and they're getting the history of which election did they vote in. That's how campaigns get information such as, you know, which voters have voted in 4 out of the last 4 elections or 3 out of 4. And so they can manage their mailing campaigns or their literature based on high efficacy voters. That's all accomplished already by those portions of the voter rolls and voter history already are public documents. So we're not doing anything on the voter lists in this bill that expands the publicness of voter rolls or voter history.
So let me just jump in, because I think there is a lot of concern about this, and I spoke to different Arizona advocates and also listened to the Senate debate about this, and this seems to be a real concern, and that voter information is being released in a way that makes it easier to access or more accessible. And we're going to play some clips from that Senate debate. But my understanding is that in most states, you can get a voter list that includes date of birth, address of the voter's first and last name, what their voting history is. Bennie, you're an election commissioner.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, most people are running late about this. You can get 24 million voters, all of this information sent to you. I get it sent to my doorstep monthly from Florida.
Monthly from what?
Florida. All 24 million, a disc every month. It sends it every month, and it has all of that pertinent information in it. This is public information. Most people just don't realize that this is happening already. When the early voting process is taking place, they're sending out I call it a PVL, a participating voter listing. So the majority of the time you can figure out, you can get to some degree a generic identification, but it's negligible. It's not something that can produce a different outcome if you were to be systematic with it. So there's little to no risk. This stuff is already happening. We're just what Ken is doing, and I like this so much because I've been involved in how they've been shaping this. It's freezing everything in place and completing the chain. So a complete chain is not going to make it more more visible. It's just going to make it more frozen to where you can audit it.
And I'm a little bit confused about where you wound up on the bill. I know that there was an amendment to make this sort of in a portal instead of directly online. So where did you wind up with that? Because I will say that in New York, we have been trying to get what Bennie calls the participating voter list from one polling location for over a year from the New York City Board of Elections, and they just refuse. We've done 4 public records requests and they won't release it. And we actually had data that was very concerning about that particular location. In the data that we pulled on the day of election, there were 700 more or close to 700 more ballots scanned than voters who had signed into the book. So we had a reason for really requesting that information. We have not been able to get it. So sometimes public records requests, I don't know how cooperative the election officials are in Arizona. In New York, they very rarely comply. So where is the latest with how this information is going to be presented to the public, and how will people get it?
What's in the bill currently that passed through the Senate today is that the voter lists 10 days before the election of who's eligible to vote in the election, and then within 48 hours after they canvass the results of the election at the county level of who voted, those lists will be forwarded by each county. We have 15 counties in Arizona. Each county will forward those voter lists to the Secretary of State's office that will put them into a portal, and they will only provide that information to people who request it through an application process, where they will provide the Secretary of State's office with their name, address, contact information, and also, and probably most importantly, sign an attestation that it will not be used for commercial purposes or misused in any way. And the bill, elsewhere in the bill, has a provision that says if you violate any of the provisions of the bill, you're subject to a Class 5 felony. So right now, the bill says that the counties forward this information to the Secretary of State's office, and the Secretary makes it available through an application process. And once the person has applied and signed the attestation, then they get access to the secure portal.
Okay, and I'm going to ask us all to keep our comments just a little tight, because I actually have a lot more that we want to get to. I have comments from the senators who are opposing the bill, and I want to make sure that we can play those and give you a chance to respond. So are those lists free? What is the charge for it?
For example, it's so many tenths of a cent per name. Essentially, there's kind of a base fee and so many cents per name. But just to give you an example, you can get the entire voter list of Arizona for about $575.
Okay, I do think that's still an obstacle. Most people don't have $575 disposable income lying around if they're, so I think that in and of itself is going to be an obstacle to increasing confidence. That's just my personal opinion.
But it's $1,500 in Tennessee. I think it completes it. I didn't know this part was in the bill, Ken, but that's amazing, because that's what happens to get the list in the first place. You have to sign an attestation. You have to say you're working with something that is political in nature. You're not working in any commercial capacity. And that is what you do to get the voter list. Certain counties don't charge much. I think Alabama is like $30,000. Tennessee is $1,500. It depends on what county you go to. I think Ohio is free. Florida used to be $5, now it's free.
Yeah.
I just think
that's going to vary per state.
I understand that. I think that is going to be a deterrent to the overall goal of the process, which is to make the average person have confidence. The average person does not have that kind of money, so I'm all for registering people and making sure that we know who has this data, but I think the cost can still be preventative. And I just want to ask you also, Ken, what about the digital ballot images? Is that the same?
Right now, there's no cost to the digital ballot images. If you have applied for the data, There's already a cost structure in state statute. It results in that $500 or $600 for the statewide. I'd like to see that come down as well. I think you've got some states that are either free or they have to charge the cost of the disc or the thumb drive or the whatever that they mail to somebody, and it ends up being $10, $15, $25. I'd like to see it come down into that range because then it would not be a deterrent.
But there's no cost right now for the digital ballot images and the
Correct.
cast vote record, just for the
Correct.
voters.
Correct.
Okay, super. This is what we're going to do. We're going to take I'm going to bump Ken and Susan off for just about 3 minutes, and Benny and I are just going to talk about what's coming up with Smart Elections Forum and how you can support us, and then we'll come back and take some more questions and look at some of the opposition to the bill and what that opposition is, and also security of digital ballot images, things like that. So we'll be right back with you, Susan and Ken. Thank you so much. So a little bit of an announcement. Next month with the forum, we're going to have a guest host who's going to co-host with Benny, and that's going to be Lynn Bernstein, who is the executive director and founder of Transparent Elections North Carolina. That is because I'm going to be doing a speech, which I'm not allowed to announce yet, that I'm working on. I just can't say anything about it. I'm not allowed to announce it, but I have to really focus on that. So I'll miss you all, but I think we're going to have a fantastic forum. Lynn is phenomenally well informed and doing all kinds of interesting things in North Carolina, and Benny's doing a lot in Tennessee also. So there's going to be lots and lots.
Yes, it'll be my first show where I'm not an election commissioner.
Wow, but you're going with the state now, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to just tell people about that?
No.
You brought it up.
I will not announce myself on any more shows as a Shelby County election commissioner. I've been recently appointed to the state level, so now I have more jurisdiction. I'm now a state election commissioner for West Tennessee instead of just Shelby County. So a little bit more headache, a lot less money, a little bit more headache.
Congratulations. That's really exciting.
I'm excited to go.
Yeah, that's great. So we'll look forward to hearing more about that, and hopefully you and Lynn can talk about that next month. So the forum next month is Tuesday, April 25th. It's always the last Tuesday of the month now, and we hope that you'll be back to join us then. You sign up at the same website you always sign up at our Mobilize site, and you can watch it on YouTube and on Facebook. And then the other thing that we do want to talk about is how you can support us. So there's lots of different ways that you can support us. Make sure that you're signed up for our mailing list, and you do that by going to our website, which is smartelections.us. That's the best way to find out what we're up to. And we also could really use your support in a couple different areas. One is just in terms of getting the word out about our forums and the different things that we're doing. We're doing a lot, mostly in New York right now. We've been working on trying to make sure that a hand-marked paper ballot remains an option in New York. There are voting machines coming into the state that could actually have everybody voting on a touchscreen computerized system, and Smart Elections has been at the forefront of that fight, getting people informed about what's happening and trying to make sure that we retain that that option for voters to mark their ballot by hand, which many people like, even though we also do support fully accessible voting. That's a really big priority for us. And you can just help us out on social media. Go ahead and follow us on Twitter, on TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube, on Twitter, and definitely share any of the posts that we're putting up. And of course, you can also make a donation, which we really, really could use. It's tax deductible. We have 501c3 status. And the way you do that is just on the website, smartelections.us, and you click on donate. It probably takes about 2 to 4 minutes. It's pretty quick there. And you can also donate on PayPal. We pay a little bit less when you donate on PayPal. And I believe that we've got a link on the website now for both of those options. So I'm going to go ahead and put the link into the chat of where you're going to donate. This is the PayPal donation. And I hope that you will take this opportunity to go ahead and support us. I know that you really appreciate our work, and we really appreciate it if you can actually support us financially. We do need your help. Anything else, Benny?
I think that's it. Reach in your pockets and give us all your money.
Love, money is
I can't
love.
wait to hear you say that. I want you to say it. We love it when you reach in your pockets and give you all your money.
We love it when you reach in your pockets and give us all your money. Was that what
Right.
you had
That's
in
good.
mind?
That's good. That's good.
Anything, any donation is very, very welcome. Okay, so we're going to get back to the forum now. Again, April 25th is the next forum, and we hope you're going to join us then. It's always 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 4 p.m. Pacific. Okay, let's bring back Ken and Susan. And Ken, I'm going to play some videos of some of the opposition.
Haters.
And I wouldn't call them haters. One of the things that I do want to say is that in talking to people in Arizona, and even we reached out to so many people to come on the forum, from the governor to senators to some of the progressive. There's a lot of progressive groups that are against this. And it includes the ACLU, All Voting is Local, Arizona Common Cause, the association. It's a coalition to end sexual violence and sexual assault and domestic violence. There's just a wide array of progressive groups that have lined up against the bill. And here in New York, there's actually a lot of progressive support for getting digital ballot images public. So it was surprising to me how fierce the opposition was. And I think one of the things when I started to talk to people in Arizona that really became clear is that the trust has really, really been frayed. And I think, we can't pretend that the 2020 audit that was run by people who really were not knowledgeable about elections and really put people through the grinder, we can't pretend that didn't happen. And I don't know who, I think, Ken, maybe your mic is moving around on your shirt. I'm not sure, but it just a lot of rustling. But I think that we need to try to rebuild the trust. And I know that you've really done a great job of doing that. I could tell that the dialogue in the Senate was very respectful and that people had a great deal of respect for you. But let's go ahead and listen to some of the comments. And I think, why don't we just start with, I think, voter intimidation. I think there is a lot of concern that this information is going to be abused and and used for voter intimidation. So let's just start with that.
Is the topic I want to move on to. We saw in previous election cycles that unofficial groups were running around our neighborhoods, going door to door, demanding to know how people voted, which resulted in threats of legal action by the Department of Justice over real concerns for voter intimidation. But these groups did all of that with so much far less information than this proposal would be affording them. So shouldn't we be concerned that this bill will make it easier for those same groups to do just that same thing, but if not just increase their door-to-door voter intimidation?
And I wonder if you can go ahead and just address.
Okay. Well, as we mentioned earlier, the list of who is a registered voter and your voter history as to what elections you have voted in is already public information in Arizona. And so this bill doesn't expand that or do anything to change that. And so I don't think this expands that problem at all. In fact, I know that I volunteered in the 2020 presidential race to get votes for my preferred candidate up in Yavapai County, where I live. And the little phone app that they had us using must have had data from all different sources added in, because I'd go to addresses and they had 6 or 8 voters over the last 10, 15 years still showing at that address. When I would call the county recorder's office to see why are these voters showing up, they would say, no, our official records only have Mr. and Mrs. Jones at that address, and the others have been removed because they moved here or there or died or whatever. So a lot of the canvassing that Senator Mendez was concerned about, I think, is because voters don't have the actual data of whose registered voters are. And this bill would, I think, reduce the potential for voter intimidation of people going around trying to ask you how you vote. I mean, people can do that already, whether we pass this bill or not. People or groups are free to come to my door and ask me how I voted, and I'm free to say, that's none of your business, thank you, and bye. And so we're not changing that at all.
I think understood and point taken. And I think we do need to try to keep it tight. Because I want to get to a few clips. But I think as a Republican, I would say there needs to be more outreach to the Republican Party to say that these tactics are not helping. They are hurting. And that there really needs to be, I think, a notching down of the volume. And I know no one can really control that. There isn't like one volume knob that any one person can turn. But I do think that the trust is clearly frayed there. And let's just look at another clip. I think we've addressed this, but this was from, I think, Senator Hernandez. She was worried about privacy. And is it going to load this? I'm having trouble. Let me just try one.
Well, there were concerns that there might be some way to reverse engineer from the cast vote record back to the ballot images and somehow be able to identify which voter voted that ballot.
Okay, I have this. Let me let her express her concerns.
Good.
Mr. Chair, Senator Bennett, I wholeheartedly appreciate your intent, and I know that your heart is in the right place on trying to bring solutions, right, to elections. My biggest concern is around the unaltered images being posted, especially before the statewide certification. And I think that's a concern that really lies with a lot of groups besides myself, with a lot of individuals. If the unaltered images are posted, right, along with the cast record, my concern is that you could, by process of elimination, still somehow risk the privacy of that vote. And I'm all one for transparency, believe me. I fully supportive of transparent measures, but that is the concern.
And let me just throw this one in, Susan. I think want to make sure Susan's unmuted, because Susan, I think, has really done a fair amount of research on this. Do you want to address that, Susan?
Yes, well, there is absolutely, again, as I showed you in that little brief slideshow, each ballot is completely anonymous. Once it leaves your hands, there's no way to track that ballot back to you. The cast vote record is just like the text version of the ballot image. It takes the picture of the ballot image and it writes out how the machine. So there's no way to put those two records together and figure out and trace it back to the voter. It's just simply not possible.
Thank you so much.
The only risk we have here, Lulu, the only risk that exists here, and we addressed it with a amendment that's already in the bill, is that if a county has a precinct that only has one or two or a handful, 3 or 4 voters, and 2 are Republican and 2 are Democrat and 1's a Libertarian, then if in these very, very small precinct situations, or precinct splits, as they're sometimes called, you might be able to figure out how one person voted, which is why we've already put an amendment in the bill that says they don't have to report the ballot images for precincts under 25.
But they will tell how many voters there were and how many ballots there are. The count will be there to try to.
Count will be there, but you won't have the individual ballot image of the one Libertarian in a precinct with only one Libertarian registered therein.
I just want to put out that this already exists now. This is Lulu. When you and I were looking at Tim Canova's race, Florida says if you have 9 people, you don't report the precinct. Everything now, these are some good questions. I will say that, but I'm a process improvement professional, and we say in process improvements, in the absence of clarity, people make things up. And what Ken is doing is giving the full set of information so they don't have to. So if you're spending time looking at the cast vote record and the ballot images, you're not necessarily knocking on anybody's door because you have the information. It's because they don't have the information that they're going to the closest source of information. You have the absence of this information that's sending them to the door. They can look all this stuff up in a spreadsheet. Now they don't have to go to anybody's door because they got a precinct. In the precinct, they got the address. There's no reason to do anything of the sorts. There is a problem, and the way that it happens that way, but that's because there is no information and there's
So
no way to
That's right.
authenticate
Okay.
anything about the election. So they go to the person.
Well, I want to play this clip because I think there's a sense that there's like a slippery slope here and that it's not
Appreciate
going to help.
the sponsor's optimism, but having seen the last few years of challenges and you know, essentially the conspiracy theories that have led to many of the presentations, that I remain skeptical.
I don't believe that there's going to be something that we can give to these people that's going to change their minds. We are going to have to keep coming back here again and again because the people that that are trying to be appeased with this bill, Mark Fincham, Carrie Lake, they will never accept the results of any election, no matter how much information, how much evidence we give them. And so, but because of that, I believe we can't start with this now. If we know that they're never going to change their minds, that they're never going to accept reality, we can't give them any of what's in this proposal. It starts us down not just a slippery slope, but it starts us down a road that we can't come back from. And I honestly do not believe democracy can survive these kinds of proposals.
Lulu, I have an absolute answer for this, I think. You'll see if you all agree with me. The reason that one of the things that tore Arizona apart and tore other parts of our country apart was because people did not have all the information. So when they gave the information only to the cyber ninjas, and the cyber ninjas decided to interpret it this way or the other way and make all these allegations and assertions, there was no way that the public could check that. They had to, you know, decide for themselves, who were they going to trust? Who were they going to believe? When everybody has the information, then those false claims cannot stick. And I feel badly that it has been a toxic environment in Arizona. I have such praise for Senator Bennett because he is so courteous to everyone and so respectful and really listens to people. And I know that goes a long way there because a lot of people are not doing that. But not to elaborate on this, but to me, this is really probably the thing that's actually preventing the Democrats from supporting this is this fear that somehow these records are going to be used to further false election claims. But they're not, because everybody will be able to say, no, you're wrong. I see it also. Right. And so this is the protection, not the slippery slope. This is what, and you know, Einstein said, if you do, I think Ken said this, Senator Bennett said this in his talk the other day, if you do the same thing over and over again, why would you expect different results? If they end up not releasing the information to everyone, they're going to be filled with false election claims again. And today in the hearing, a senator said, that same senator that you just saw, Senator Mendez, said the ballot images were given to somebody out of state and they went into, you know, bamboo ballots and this and that. Well, the bamboo ballots were not related to the ballot images, but it is true that one person, Dr. Shiva, ended up with the ballot images and he could say whatever the heck he wanted because nobody could refute it because nobody else had them. So anyway, I've said enough on that, but I really,
right. I appreciate that. I want to use the last couple minutes that we have now to just show one real problem that I think this can help address, and that is that we do actually have problems sometimes with the voting machines counting the results incorrectly. And this really is not talked about enough. People are very hesitant to talk about this because they feel that it's going to, you know, somehow, you know, that it's going to somehow make people, you know, not trust the equipment. And I think I'm going to try to show you, let me see, I want to show you my screen in such a way that you'll be able to just follow along with me. I'm going to see if I can try to show you a few of these very quickly. So this was on the ES&S Express Vote XL in Pennsylvania in 2019. This machine counted the votes incorrectly and called the wrong candidate the winner for a judge a judge race there. There were actually tens of thousands of ballots that were counted incorrectly. And then I want to see if I go here, if you follow along with me. No, I'm actually gonna, let me see if I can share this a different way, because I want to go through these a little bit quickly. Let's share this. You're going to see this screen for a minute, but now you're going to get to see some other screens. Are you seeing? I'm so sorry. Okay, I'm going to have to do them one at a time. So this is a race in Monmouth County, New Jersey, and the voting machines here counted the ballots double. And again, they declared the wrong candidate the winner. And there's actually an investigation taking place in New Jersey now because of this. And this was actually not discovered, even though they had an audit there. And it was discovered because a person did a public records request, and in the process of getting that information, figured out that there was just the wrong number of ballots, and they figured out that they had double counted some of these ballots. Now I'm going to show you some information about Georgia. There was a race in Decatur County, and again, the machines counted the ballots incorrectly. On this one, there were actually, this is Michelle Long Spear's race. She was initially declared third place, but she actually won, and she figured out something was wrong. There were precincts where there were actually 0 votes recorded for her, and she found it very suspect, and she demanded that they recount the ballots, and it turned out that she had won the election. And these are just a few. I don't even have time to go into all of the races that there's good data for where the machines counted incorrectly. Antrim County, Michigan is a prime example. There were 6,000 votes for Trump that were accidentally counted by the machine for Biden. New Hampshire, there was a race where the machines actually counted incorrectly because there was a fold in the ballot, and the shadow of the fold made the machine think that the bubble was filled in when it wasn't, and the machines counted incorrectly. So these are the types of things that just having these digital ballot images on hand can actually help us identify. I worry how many of these races are we not knowing, or do we not know about, where the machines are counting incorrectly? The ones that we've caught are usually where it's really obvious, if there's tens of thousands of votes missing, but maybe it's a close race and we may not be catching it. So that's one of the main reasons I'm advocating for the digital ballot images to be public. I think that it is going to increase confidence and accuracy, and I think that we do not have nearly enough checks on the actual machines. There are very few states, almost no states, that are actually auditing 100% of the ballots of 100% of the races. I think Maryland is actually the only one right now. And they're not looking at the paper ballots. So there's a lot more that we could go into. I have more questions that we can maybe do a follow-up email on, such as, are the digital ballot images going to be connected to the paper ballots? And I don't know if you have an answer for that at this point. Ken, do you know if a quick
answer is the bill says that the counties shall store the paper ballots in a conveniently retrievable manner. Because yes, the next step, if you verify that the ballot images were correctly tabulated in the cast vote record, the next step you might want to look at is, are the ballot images exact, correct reflections of the paper ballots? And so if you wanted to do a random, pick 1% or 50, or you could do a risk limiting type of an audit that says, we're going to pick, we made sure that the ballot images are correctly tabulated in the cast vote record. Now we're going to pick 50 or 100 or 500 random ballot images and have the county go get the actual paper ballot, and we'll make sure that those are exact as well. And by doing that, that would be frosting on the cake, basically. Now you have verified the cast vote record, added up the ballot images correctly. Now you've verified that the ballot images are exact replications of the paper ballots themselves.
And in order to do that, usually you have to put some sort of number on each ballot that connects it, number on like the digital ballot image that connects it to a number on the paper ballot. Usually in a high-speed scanner, there is a way to like stamp each digital ballot image and each paper ballot with the same number. So is that...
Most ballots are processed in batches, and there is a internal record in these election management systems that allows you to say, if this ballot was part of batch number 692, for example, the 2020 election in Maricopa County that was so scrutinized with the audit, they had 10,681 batches. Most of the batches had batches of 100 ballots, but if you know which batch a ballot is in that you want to check the digital image to the actual paper ballot, those batches are identified on the boxes that they are stored away in, and you can actually find them pretty quickly.
Okay, so you're doing it through batches, and also sometimes people create what's called a manifest, which is basically like a file cabinet of like every single ballot, so you can go through, and sometimes you can keep them in order in the manifest.
And Arizona Dominion system does that.
Right. So then you can track them back to the paper ballots, and that is very important. And I want to just end on this note: why it is so important for the digital ballot images to be connected to the paper ballots. The paper ballot is always what we go back to. It's the real truth of how the voter voted. And this is a comment that Bruce Cord put up previously. I am a photographer and use Photoshop. I can doctor a ballot image so that you cannot tell it has been doctored, meaning it's not proof of vote. So
if you do that, I believe if you do that, you'll change the hash code on that ballot image.
And it won't match the cast vote record either, because that happens when the ballot is scanned. So you have to get a hold to the image and do that afterwards, which means you'll fail the first line of defense because you won't even match the cast vote record.
And just one quick thing about that is that in order to change the ballot images, you also have to change the vote totals. So if someone can change the vote totals, wouldn't you rather have the ballot images to look at rather than nothing to look at? We're not trying to eliminate other kinds of audits. This is in addition to audits. This is a major beneficial addition to any other kinds of audits that a jurisdiction wants to do.
So I just want to say one of the things that can happen here is not necessarily making the votes add up correctly to the forged, digital ballot images, but creating chaos, which is certainly what the goal of some people is just to create chaos. And you say, hey, these digital ballot images don't add up. But that's why I'm going back to this issue of the hash, is that in the statute, Ken, do they have to hash the digital ballot images? I'm just muting and unmuting you.
Automatically.
I don't think that's specifically mentioned in the bill right now.
Automatically, though.
I'm sorry, just one at a time, please.
It's done automatically in each election management system used in the U.S.
Right. So the system
without specifying that in the bill, it's part of these election management systems already. I'd be happy to add that to the bill if that addressed anyone's concerns.
I know it's one of my concerns because I don't know that the general public understands the hashes, or even if the election commissioners necessarily understand them. And it's important for them to understand how critical that is to maintaining the whole chain of custody of the digital ballot images, that they can be hashed in a way that guarantees this is what all of them look like. And if they get changed, we will know. So I know that's something that I think is very important. Benny, you wanted to weigh in on that, and I'm going to give you the last word.
It happens automatically, but making it a part of the public chain probably would put a little more teeth in it.
Put it into the statute, you're saying, or even
put
regulation.
A little more teeth by doing that.
I'm sorry, what?
It would have more teeth with it being declared that it has to have that. So any competing software or hardware would then have to.
Thank you. I now have my First Amendment for when the bill gets over to the House.
Right.
Should have talked to me first. But I think this is very, very informative, and we really appreciate everyone's time. We really appreciate people hanging in here and watching the whole forum. We went a little over time, but I think it was very informational. I learned a lot. I want to thank our guests, Ken Bennett and Susan Pynchon. And I'm going to say goodnight, and then Benny and I will sign off. So thank you so much for being here with us.
Good to see you again.
Thank
you too.
Guys.
Okay. Benny and I usually just like to say goodnight. And what is it that we say, Benny?
Something off of Mr. Robot when they burning down a building.
What is that?
This is what democracy looks like. I'm gonna have
This
to
is
send you a
what
clip of it.
democracy looks like. Thank you so much for being with us. Please remember to support us and come back next month. We'll see you then.